Justin, the guy on this, as the wheel turns, so the days of our rides. Okay, this is a little too high up. I need to go down. There we go. I don't know why I had to be vertical on the phone, whatever. I'll have to figure that out later. So I apologize if this seems awkward or weird versus the horizontal. But anywho, uh, welcome to my garage. 71 degrees, beautiful day in Colorado. Yes, I'm based out of Colorado. And today we're going to talk about brands and how much they influence you. And how much, this has been going on for a long time, for, almost a century now, of like, this is the greatest widget and you gotta have to have it. And we would all run out and go get it, like pet rock, right? Back in the 50s or the 60s. And well, what does that translate to today? And what we're looking at for, I don't know, the big three or four: Specialized, Trek, Pond, Giant, making all these bikes. And we're into the cycling community. And if you haven't, if you stumbled on across this, yes, I'm a bike guy. I've been in the cycling industry for over 30 years. I've seen a lot of weird stuff, a lot of marketing from several different companies over the years. Some still exist, some don't. Some have just been rebranded. So that being said, there's a lot to this industry that relates to a lot of different industries out there, right? And well, I wanted to start off with the Specialized in the Trek world, and also Pond and all those other brands. And the funny thing came in mind. I'm like walking the dog, and something's got into my head, like, well, we got some, what influences now, that kind of thing. And I did a little poll, and granted, I mean, it's a small sampling of people. I did the post on YouTube as well as my Facebook, and I got some responses. But the curious part of it is for to be honest, and you literally look at yourself and you go, what influences me to buy something, right? As older you get, your purse strings might be a little bit tighter because you have kids or whatever, or you just like, I'm just not going to pay that, that kind of price, regardless of how much of promotions and whatever is out there. And there's a lot of perspectives of that, of what the big three or four have been pushing down for years. And the branding is huge in the cycling community. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like running shoes in a sense. You hear Nike, you hear New Balance and Sauconys and Asics and Brooks, and like they all have their kind of like branding of niches, and you've seen them, right? And the same thing for the cycling. And I use the shoe analogy. The reason being is, everybody wears shoes, for the most part. I mean, I got flip-flops on, and I can tell you, I just got those at the, Walmart, and I'm like, oh, those are kind of cool. It said Corona, whatever, but, and there you go. It's kind of like an impulse buy, and that's a whole nother branding thing too. We'll get into that in a minute, but I'm just looking at like the big three and how they've been branding over like the 3 decades. Back in the 80s and the 90s, where you didn't have this internet, and we definitely didn't have YouTube, and it didn't have all those resources of figuring out what was good and what was not. So you really heavily relied on going into the brick and mortar store and talking to a person like me. And I've been spoon-fed this Kool-Aid for whatever company I'm working, branding wise, working for or representing, right? We carried Oakley's, we had Trek and Schwinn. Schwinn was huge back then. They were like, you're a Schwinn dealer, and you're just kind of like, it's the stable of the bike industry in the late 80s and early 90s, right? Well, we know what all that happened. I mean, if you don't, if you're like, I have no clue what you're talking about, it's like, all I see is Schwinn is in department store brands. Well, they used to be the brand back in the 70s and 80s. They were the leader, family-owned bike brand, and they had like the iconic picture of a kid flying down the stairwell, going to the bike underneath the Christmas tree. That's what I remember in my head of imagery, and you can see a sign right above me that says homegrown Schwinn. I mean, I was like, that was the brands that are running today, not Schwinn per se. Somebody just bought the name and they're producing bikes still under a different company. But when you're looking at still owned by Trek, still owned by Specialized, still owned by Giant, you're looking at those brands and they've been building on those brands since the beginning of the creation of the bike line itself. Like Trek in the 70s and 80s were building out of a red barn. Specialized, they've had like this, you know, cutting edge kind of cool factor, which has been going on for a long time since the late 80s, early 90s. And this is all brought upon by the big mountain bike boom, where you have the Gary Klein and Ritchie and the godfathers of mountain biking. They took basically cruisers, welded the hell out of them, and just went down bombing down California hills. That's where it just all sparked. And fast forward today, you got crazy mountain bikes of all different kinds and hybrids and road bikes and that and so forth. But they've been building and building and building upon these branding. Okay, so, you know, yeah, it's like, how much are we influenced? Are we a sucker to all those kinds of things? And to some level, we still are, but the invention of this internet that you're seeing me through and also YouTube, that's really opened a playing field for these Trek and Specialized brands, and some of them kind of embrace it, they kind of worked with it, and I want to talk about the company I worked for a little while. It's called Big Five Sporting Goods, which was a sporting good chain on the west of the Mississippi. It's quite a few locations. You know, the Big Five is basically started as the Big Five locations of a sporting goods store back in Cali, and I think they started in the 50s. And I worked for them for several years, about 9 years. And when I first started working for them in 2000, I think it was 2003, they were old school. I mean, they made me dress up with a professional dress, tie, shirt, slacks, dress shoes, because they wanted to be that 50s looking sporting goods store. And that was, you know, their motto was, we're not going to fix it. And it's kind of like one of those things where that company, somehow they survived, but it took them forever to collect emails. It took them forever to sell stuff online. It took them forever to do all these things. But they had like a brick and mortar running store that did what they needed to do. So that's another thing. It's like, well, some of these companies, they have this anchor and they're just not going to take off on these new trends and so forth. But then you have other companies like, you know, Trek and Specialized are just like trying to get to the, you know, the next thing, the next shiny thing. It's like, all depends what your environment is, right, for business wise. So if you're a business person working in retail and you're watching this, like, okay, a lot of these things resonate with me. I understand this. But in the 90s, you know, we didn't have any of that internet stuff. So it was related upon, you know, the magazines and the races that resonated through those magazines, like, you know, the King of the Mountains in Winter Park or Tour de France or what, you know, those kinds of either local or abroad kind of branding. And people were influenced by that. They saw like John Tomac, he was racing on a Mongoose. You know, a Mongoose brand is no longer really anything today, but back in the day, it was like, it was pretty cool. It's one of those nicer lines to carry. And, you know, it's like everybody knew John Tomac. I couldn't tell you what he won or any of that. And I was in the industry. It's like, I just saw billboards and promotion stuff and maybe a couple articles, and, you know, 30 years later, I totally forgot what it's all about, right? Like, I can Google it and find out now on the internet, but one of those things, like, the branding is like, I was influenced, even, yeah, I was influenced by that, as well as like, oh, they're doing cool things. I was in mountain bike racing back then as a novice, and I wanted one of those, you know, nice bikes, which I did. And, you know, even in the shop, I was representing the brand that we were carrying as well, being influenced. So their long lines, the long line of Kool-Aid drinking, that kind of thing. So what really kind of brings me to full circle, and you're like, okay, you're talking about brands and the history and all that kind of stuff, and that's cool. It's like, what really dawned on me is I have my own shop now. And if you're following me, you kind of understand. It's like, it's a garage shop. I basically built a bike shop out of my garage, and I'd taken small parts of the bike shop and kind of, you know, emphasized them in my garage. Like, service center, like you see behind me. I got a little fit area over across the way, and I got a little, shipping little area too where I keep all the boxes and stuff that I ship out. Well, the thing is I'm not brand influenced anymore. What I mean by that is like, I don't have any dealers. I buy used, right? And I buy whatever that I deem fit that I want to work on, or what's good value to the customer that I'm trying to represent in a sense. And then the other stuff that I buy, like chains and tubes and tires and everything, I'm just like you. I'm a general consumer. I don't have those wholesale license or wholesale dealers because I'm a bike shop and a garage. They don't sell to me. So I have to go out there myself and go find the best deal on that PC 11110 chain, or that bar tape that I need, or cables and housing. So I'm basically, I'm a bike shop-ish, but I'm also a consumer perspective. I'm like, okay, where do I find the chain? It's the same chain. Can I get it $5 cheaper somewhere else, get it closer to wholesale? And for me, it doesn't bother me that much because I don't sell a lot of new stuff or buy a lot of new stuff to refurbish bikes. I mean, chains and tires and cables and housing, that's one thing. But other than that, when you're looking at purchasing, to hit the qualifiers to get free freight or buy enough product from one of those like J&B or Quality Bike Supply, which is like those those vendors that a lot of bike shops use. It's such a huge high dollar amount to hit, plus I have to hit a certain amount for free freight. So for me, I'm the consumer. I basically, long story short, I'm the consumer perspective. In other words, I'm not drinking anybody's Kool-Aid. I mean, I have my preferences, of course, sure, because I really have to reflect on myself and go, is it because we carried these in all the shops I worked in? Or is my experience of actually using this stuff and knowing how it works? And is it function over branding? Like, that's really kind of an interesting perspective that I came across to myself. So that's where I was like, okay, how many individuals out there like you, either working in an industry or in an industry of some sort, is related to or drinking the Kool-Aid of those brands? And sometimes you need to step back and go, oh, what are those brands actually working for you? And that there lies the business aspect of it. And as a consumer, it's like, am I just swayed to wear a Nike shoe because I saw all their ads? Or does it really fit? So you'd ask any avid runner that does a lot of running, because they're blowing through shoes every 3 to 6 months, and that's a $50 to $100 hit each time. They're going to end up getting a shoe that actually works for them. And it really doesn't depend on the brand. It's like, oh, the Saucony works for me, or for me, the Asics work for me. It fits my foot. So it comes to function over branding. So when you look at an industry that we're in right now, somebody that's a newbie that's walking right in, or like, my buddy's into riding and I want to join in, and I don't know anything. And I walk into a bike shop and all I see is $4,000 bikes. And they're just like, I don't know if this is for me. So unfortunately, there's a lot of barriers that the cycling industry has built up over the years because of their branding. And that's kind of, they are selling to the alreadies. They're not selling to the news. The newbies are coming into the industry. So anyway, that's one of the topics I wanted to talk about the big brands. But we got a question here or a statement. Let's say that we are attracted to a specific brand that has recently released a new specific feature, unlike brands did out of the industry. Does that make us influenced by a brand or by the tech? Now, that's a good question. Like, okay, let's back up. Where's all this stuff made? And a lot of it is the same, like Trek and Specialized. They're in the same Merida facility in Taiwan. You got a little Trek corner, you got a little Specialized corner. And, a lot of the tech has to cross over, right? And that kind of thing. But when that's the leading edge of these brands, like Trek came out with the new Slash, which has all this weird, crazy linkage system. And as a former mountain biker, I'm like, man, that's just a lot of stuff that's gonna break. That's what comes into my head immediately. It's like, wow, you just took something simple and made it super complicated, you know? And but there's obviously a test market out there like, that is the coolest thing. So is it, if you're influenced by the tech, I'm a tech nerd. I look at that and it's like, I really question a lot of things right off the bat, right? And you're like, really? But I really, to get a true like acid test to it, it's like I need to go talk to a representative that's been coached on all the talking points of the Kool-Aid. Okay, so you listen to all that, and it's like, okay, where are they coming from? Where do the engineers come from? What's the benefits of this? Where did all this? And then go ride it, right? And that's where when the rubber hits the road, right? You actually ride it and you test ride it. Would I go buy that right out of the gate because it's the coolest thing? It's like, well, I've had more dollars and cents, maybe, but I don't. So I might rent one or demo one first to see if it even fits my kind of riding and that kind of thing. So the tech is cool, and in an industry, it's always. They found this out early. It's like every few years they got to come out with something new to jazz up their Kool-Aid brand. So it gets those people that are influenced by that particular brand to buy more of that brand to keep kind of push the can down the road. Specialized SL8, the Slashes Trek crazy linkage system. Then you see like what's different from the 90s versus today. The 90s, you just saw them in the magazine and you read it, and you maybe talk to somebody in the shop if they even have it. To today's, like when that SL8 hit the floors, like there's bike shops that have YouTube channels out there that are just constantly like reviewing it. Some of them were good, some of the comparisons. And it's like, okay, you kind of see their perspective of it, but it does give a little more of that firsthand review perspective, right? Where it's actually non-sponsored individual bike shop person, but if they're still carrying the brand, they're still drinking the Kool-Aid to some level. I mean, if you had somebody like me walk into the Specialized store that I'm not a Specialized dealer, and I go, hey, I want to demo that bike, pull that bike off the rack, go for a ride it, and for my old body being 50 plus, like, does it resonate to me? That kind of thing. So okay. I mean, by influence by tech, there are only two perspectives at hold at it: consumers or the engineer consumers. 2015. Oh yeah, the dampening. Oh yeah. Yeah. So there's always been an engineer perspective of the industry, obviously, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's like way off base. The Zertz inserts. They went into the Specialized brand prior to the one you're talking about. They branded that so heavily that they put on all their lines, and it's like supposed to give all this extra dampening and so forth. Well, I talked to a former Trek engineer, and he said they actually took that frame and popped out all those plastic inserts and tested the frame with and without it. Those inserts did nothing different to the frame flex and all that. So that's what you told me. I don't have any, documentation or anything to that, but it does make a light bulb in my head. It's like, is it flashy engineer looking cool stuff that says it does something? It still does it. It's just, did the Zertz actually do it? Or is it just part of, little rubber insert to make it look like it's basically a sticker, in a sense of branding, that kind of thing. And as a consumer, I was influenced by that because we carried Specialized. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I didn't, I don't have the machine to text the flex of the frame and so forth. So when you're looking at, those dampening systems and so forth, I mean, now, like when Trek came out with the Damane with the flex, and you actually can get on the bike and you push on the back of the seat and you see the actual flex to it, the ISO little bending thing, that worked. But here's the kicker. They also put it on aluminum frames. I'm sorry, aluminum frames is stiff material. It's going to hardly have any flex. So it's more of like a flash in the pan for the aluminum frames, but actual functional in the carbon. So yeah, so it's partially marketing and partially legit, and then you go there. You know, and going back to that marketing with Trek and Specialized, we were a Trek dealer back in the Parker Bikes days, and our competition, which was like a mile down the street, was Specialized. And the consumers were so influenced, even back then, you had like, they walk in, oh, you don't carry Specialized? Okay, and then they walk right out. It's like they didn't even register to even look at the comparison. Nowadays, I think it's a lot more, you know, the consumer is more educated in a sense and a lot more savvy, because for several reasons. We went through several recessions, we went through some pinch points, and realizing that a lot of the stuff, it's, you know, the consumer is more educated now, and they have ability to stand there in the store, flip up and see pricing comparisons, also reviews of the product they are standing in front of. So when you're looking at a $2,000 to $3,000 purchase, they can do their research on the sales floor while they're standing there. And then that becomes more of educated, and you're looking at reviews, independent reviews from like magazines that, like Bicycle Magazine, they'll do their independent reviews and that kind of thing. And, you know, everybody has, you know, you still got to have a level of bias. I mean, there's just some people like certain things and don't like things. And if you see a good review, they will mention that in those particular things, like, well, I'm more partial to this, but hey, I can see the points of this. And then you can take that, you know, take that to heart. But what it comes down to mostly is you getting on it or trying it out yourself, and if it fits to what your needs are. So for example, like a tool, you know, it's like, I'm very partial to the park tools and also feedback tools, because I know they're higher quality tools. They're used in the race circuit and they've been used for years. Like park tools have been used in shops for years. I'm kind of stained by that Kool-Aid. But if I just need a press fit bearing cup set, and I'm only going to do maybe 1 or 2 a year, I got the knockoff one just because it's like 1/10 of the cost. I tried it out. It works for my needs. It does what it's supposed to do. If I did them every day, of course I would invest into the $300 parks one, but I'm not doing them every day. I'm doing it like twice a year, if that. Why am I investing in a tool that's just going to collect dust and look cool in my video? I mean, it's just not, you know, it's just not there. So that's where I was really kind of questioning these things on my walk with the dog. And, you know, it's like branding. Okay, so I put out a little thing out there. And are you, you know, to be honest, are you influenced by new bikes and accessories? I was mostly kind of focusing on the new. And is it brand marketing? Is it independent product review, like from magazines or what have you? Or from like Jensen's USA, they actually have reviews from customers that purchase that particular product's reviews, you know, as an Amazon and all that too. But for like bike stuff, that kind of thing, that actually purchased it. Then there's like this thing about racers, and that's kind of really, you know, talking to a former racer, which kind of brought this out into my mind, as well as watching, you know, Tour de France and all these things. And, you know, I follow racers on the market, and they're branding themselves because the brand that they're representing at the time may or may not keep them. So they need to kind of like, I'm this racer and I do these cool things, and here's and in today's market, they're branding themselves. Back in the 90s, John Tomac rode for Mongoose. You know, it's just Lance Armstrong rode for Trek, and Le Mans was his own, but he had teams too that he, you know, went with too. But today, the branding is shifted for those individual racers. So I was like, are you influenced by the racers of what they use? Also, I was kind of questioning about the into YouTube influence or social media influence, like, you know, Instagram and all that. And my question was like, well, if I was, let's say Park Tool came to me, which they haven't, but if they came to me and it's like, I want you to test this new product, we will give you X amount of money or parts or tools or whatever. And then I do a contract and I'm like, oh, let's check out this fancy new hammer that Park Tool came out with. I'm just using this example. And a hammer, obviously most of you out there have a hammer in the house somewhere, right? Why do I want to buy this hammer? Because it says Park Tool on it and it's blue and it's kind of cool. So if I'm being paid by a Park Tool or any company influencer, does that sway you to buy that product? Or I'm a guy in the garage going, hey, you know what? I use this almost every day because I actually use it and I'm not being paid to do that. I'm actually, and I've done a couple of videos like that of like repair stands, what I use, and there's a lot of good other repair stands, but what I had in my arsenal that I use on a daily, I want to at least represent that. And that's what I put out there. And that's gotten a lot of views. And the people, it seemed to me that really kind of gravitate to that versus the paid influenced one. Well, during my survey, nobody checked the paid influenced. So some of the people did pay or pinged the non-sponsored social media influenced, which is good. But the most out of all 5 of those topics, racers were 8%, which is kind of a little bit. Most of it was independent product reviews. So people are becoming very savvy. They look at that review and like, I don't know if I really want that. I've done that now too. Like, I don't know if I want that cleaning brush or whatever. Maybe try this one, it looks better. Does this tool work good? And then you read the reviews. And I always, for me, I always go straight to the negative reviews. Like, what are they saying? Like, is it just something that they were just grumpy about? There's a grumpy reviewer, which there are those out there, or is it they have a legit beef on the product itself? I like the hammer from Park. Reason being is I'm partial to the rubber mallet. And when I realized this rubber mallet piece is replaceable, I thought it was pretty cool. So I figured not just a cool tool on my wall, but having a rubber mallet was one of my go-to tools back in the day in Parker bikes. So instead of having 2 in 1, all my other hammers are your standard hammer with the claw, which I really don't use the claw part, but the rubber mallet, I do a lot of tapping on stuff if you've seen any of my videos sometimes to get things to loosen up. But anyway, back to that. So yeah, I wanted to share that. And, so that realized to me is like, okay, what have you guys, you guys watching this video, are you influenced by the Trek brand or the Specialized brand? And I'm going to tell you my perspective of what I do. See, I no longer are pigeonholed. Granted, I do have preferences. The reason being is I've had experiences with those particular brands in-house. When they're new, when I'm looking for used, I gravitate to certain ones because I know there's no mystery to me in a sense, less mystery, let's put it that way, in the actual brand itself of like what they had issues with and that kind of thing. So it makes me, it helps me take the risk out of how much I'm going to have to put into that bike to be at the level it needs to be for me to sell it, to feel comfortable selling a safe bike that's fine-tuned, ready to go, and also the fitting and whatever kind of riding that bike is supposed to be for. So when you look at, I don't have brands anymore, but I still gravitate, full disclosure, to certain brands because I'm just used to them, right? But I'm not a person that's gonna, just say, you got to buy this one. And what's really cool for me is I've had opportunities to ride Cannondale. I've never ridden Cannondales before because I was in dealers that didn't carry Cannondale. And not just for a test ride, like actually, go for a ride. And same thing for some Thai bikes and Eddie Merckx and some other brands that I never would have even thought of. And some of them, they fit different. They have some good things to it. And that's where my branding is kind of a different perspective. My branding is not the product that I'm selling. This is going to sound really weird. I was thinking about this earlier. It's like I'm really branding myself. And I know that like on YouTube, I'm branding myself. But in my business itself, I know a guy bicycles.com. The bikes that I'm selling, yes, I'm selling the bikes, but I'm really selling what I did to the bike to make it ready for you, the consumer, to get it. I'm trying to take the scary out of used. I'm trying to go through the bike. I strip them down to the frame. I put them all back together, replace any parts that I need to replace. I do everything you do if you bought that used bike and walked into the bike shop and had them do a tune-up on it to get it safe to ride and ready for you. Then the kicker is locally, I have a fit area, which I have across this way here, where I'll actually do a static fit on somebody to make sure, number one, it's the right size bike for them. Get them educated on the bike itself, how to shift it and all that, and also do adjustments, maybe swap out a stem or saddle or do some bar and handles, those kind of fittings, which take care of about, this is gonna chap some people's hides, like it takes about 98% of the people out there riding. Period. You know, the 2%er, those that pay for those, higher end fits for me, they're cool. I get it. Yes, but you're paying $300 to somebody to put dots on you in a camera and do all those body geometry, and there is a place for that, yes. But for recreational, just starting off, a static fit will take care of about 98% of those people, and they don't need us to pay that $300 sticker price just to be fitted to the bike. And which really blows my mind, some of the shops out there don't do even fittings at all, and they're selling this $4,000 to $5,000 bikes. It kind of blows my mind. Reason being is back in the 90s, we did the static fit on every bike that we sold included. Now it's kind of the model I'm following today as the used. I'm trying to get people out there to have the best experience possible out there. So the branding for me is me. I'm trying to provide that good quality bike, and it doesn't matter if it's Trek Special, as long as it fits you correctly and it fits the kind of riding you're wanting to start off doing. It could be a Trek Specialized, Giant, Cannondale, Le Mans, whatever. I gravitate to buy certain brands because I'm just knowledgeable of them, and I have the outcome is going to be a little bit better. Not to say the Jameses and the Mongooses, the older ones and the older Schwinn's are not bad. It's just, that's the kind of a thing too. It's like, okay, I got to be a little mindful of everybody else is drinking these Kool-Aids, so I should carry the Specialized and Treks because that's what they're kind of looking for, or it resonates with them when they look at the posts on the Facebook and Craigslist and my website and so forth. So yes, I'm still kind of, I guess, swayed by those brands, not because I think they're cool or anything, it's because I'm affected by whatever's already been out there as a market. So that's where it lays. But what I'm really pushing, and anybody who's bought a bike from me or met me in person, that's what I'm projecting, or that's what I'm trying to sell you, is what I do and what I've provided and what I'm going to help you to start off of the journey. That's what most, if not all, the bike shops need to gravitate to. They need to give that warm hug back. Some of the shops are super nice and they're corporate, like Trek. I go to the Trek store here. I know some of the guys when they used to be at Lee's. They do that, but the product line, it's still outrageously high. I'm sorry, they're just really expensive. And some of the salespeople, they get it, they understand. But that's what they have. That's what they have in their arsenal. So you can't just be mad at the salesperson. It's the company thing. Same thing with Specialized. I mean, the people are still people, but the brands is what you're actually walking into those stores for. So yeah, are you influenced when you walk in there? Yeah, you go in the Trek store, all you're gonna see is Treks. You're not gonna. Then you go into a Specialized store, then you're gonna try to ask them, well, the Roubaix compared to Damani, what's the differences in the price? And literally, and since neither of them are fitting you to the bike and you go for a test drive, they're both going to feel kind of the same. And on top of it, at the bottom of the end of the day, as a consumer, you read the reviews and both of them are about the same. It's going to come down to price, period. That's the only thing that's left, because if they don't take the extra step to fit you to the bike, and I don't know how many times I've had people come to me and I fit them to the bike and I do the whole thing and they're like really kind of iffy. Oh, we got a couple other bikes to look at. I was like, okay, that's fine. And 9 times out of 10, they came back. Like, let's put it that way. I had a pretty high percentage. Actually, if they're serious in purchasing, they're going to come back because They know the bike is solid and maybe a little bit more than the one they saw, but they knew they're gonna, I educated them, like, you're gonna need a tune on that. It's, this is what you're looking at for pricing, and this has already been done. So I help people get over that hump. So therefore, I can combat the more expensive, because basically my pricing is essentially the bike that you bought used, you took it to the shop and be tuned up, and actually it's a little bit less than what it would cost you. In addition to, I throw in a fit, which you're not going to get in any used bikes, unless you buy it at a bike shop that does do fittings, which there's not very many out there. And most of the bike shops now, if they do fittings, they have a fit service that they charge for. So drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah. So when you're looking at the big ticket items like brands, like, the bikes, but when you're looking at like lubes or tubes, I mean, a Specialized tube and a Trek tube, they're made in the same place. The Shimano chain and the SRAM chain, I'm pretty sure they're made in the same place. I like the Quick Link or the PowerLink Quick Link, so that's why I gravitate to those. But for me, to take the chain on and off without having to use those push pin throughs. Granted, the newer chains from Shimano, most of them have that new Quick Link that they have, but for me, that was a game changer for just chains, for a tech perspective of it, of ease and doing it. Also, here's a little weird thing is I've done the chain checker on new chains. Shimano seems like to have a little extra play in them right out of the box. The SRAM, you put this chain checker on it, and it's like you kind of have to force it in there. It's like, it's snug. So that being said, maybe the SRAMs have a little better tolerances. I mean, you can go look at the research. There's several shops out there that do chain stretches and stuff like that. I'm really intrigued by them because they do lube testing too, that kind of thing. There's like one guy in Outfit, Zero Friction. He's kind of an oddball guy, kind of like me, but I'm the American version. But he just gets in front of the camera and he just starts talking about his life. then he goes into the research of testing the chains. So it kind of blows my mind. But it's like, okay, cool. He owns a shop, obviously, and he's doing this thing on the side, and he's gotten like Silka actually plugged them because they had their waxes tested by this guy. And there's another outfit in Australia too that does the same thing of wearing the parts, and they just have these prefab machines that just you throw your parts on there with the waxes or whatever, or the parts, and they do all this testing. But anywho, that's where I kind of rely on it's like, okay, I believe that guy's chart on what lubes do what breakdowns than any brand telling me like, oh, the Bontrager lube here does all this great stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure. But am I in the field and I need to put some lube on a chain? I don't care what it is. As long as it's not WD-40, I'm good, right? So, it's like for me, a mechanic for all these years and perspective of working in shops and looking at branding. Okay, so let's go into like the big box stores, right? How much are you influenced? When I worked at the Big Five Sporting Goods chain, sorry about that. They really didn't, we were not on commissions. It's basically you just had to sell people to help out, and their selling practices that they trained for is basically, if somebody's looking at a wall of backpacks and you go up and you not just say, how you doing, can I help you? This is kind of like this mentalist perspective of how messing with people's minds, but they're like, no, you just grab a backpack and it's like, hey, I found this one. It actually works really well and it has all these pockets and so forth and all that kind of thing. And then you can put it in their hands. And you're sitting here and the consumer's like, oh, okay, cool. And weirdly enough, most of the time, I'd say 1 out of 5 times, that person just took that backpack that you had in their hand, that you just put in their hand, and just walked to the register and bought it. It's just, like, okay, sold, it's just, That's the influence. It just blew me away. And they have end caps. Obviously, you walk in any store, and when I've done a lot of merchandising for the big box chain and what they had us do, and some of it was planogram set, and some of it was just relied on you for testing. Like, okay, this is stuff on sale. Put some backpacks with some bed rolls with some camp fuel on top, that kind of thing. And working there for 9 years and doing rotations every week, you're kind of like, either certain parts of the store were hot that things would sell, and then there were certain items that when they were on sale and put on the caps as suggested combination mixes would sell too. So when you walk into like the Trek or the Specialized store, well, they're supposed to have that, but I think they're still missing a mark on a lot of the things, because you walk in and you're kind of like, the flow is sometimes there. And granted, it depends on the layout, because they don't have like the same cookie cutter design and layout, that kind of thing for each store. The footprints will be different. The traffic is all that. When you're actually a consumer walking into, think about when you go into like your King Soopers or Kroger's or your grocery store. That's a big chain. All those end caps, they're all designed to do that, to grab you that item, that sell price, and that kind of thing. So we are influenced every day when we go out. And when you know how you're being influenced, kind of cracks me up. It's just like, oh, I've seen behind the curtain a little bit, and being the influence there. And if I had a brick and mortar store, I would be practicing all those things that I've worked at Big Five on a weekly basis. You walk into the store and things need to look differently every time you go in the store. So with bike shops, if you're a retailer watching this and you're listening to me jibber jabber still about all this crap, or influencing stuff and things, people want to see different. It doesn't have to be the high-end shiny thing, because sometimes when it's the high-end shiny thing that's $8,000, it turns people off. It maybe it's the warm hug, or maybe it's the clearance table, or refresh clearance items, or but to be a retailer, brick and mortar, to sustain, you need to change those hot areas where people walk in your store. They like walk left, look right. They have like that. There's been a whole bunch of studies on that. When they walk in, you got to have, what are they running into and what are they looking at, and what's going to draw them and what's going to pull them into your store. And that needs to be rotated weekly. In a sense that I walk into the Trek and walk into the Specialized corporate stores that I walk in today. If I go in there, it needs to look different, not completely, but enough, a different display each time to gravitate a different kind of eyes. Or like you walk in and you see a Venture Pack bike with all the bike stuff on it, and it's like, that's kind of cool. I'm in a midlife crisis rut. I need to go out and just go ride and camp and get away from everything. And it's like, you got to sell that experience every time you walk in there. Big Five Sporting Goods has a big front end cap when you walk in from cast wrap. That's changed out monthly because they sell that space for whatever brand, if it's Coleman or whatever, they get that space. But that is changed out monthly or sometimes twice a month to a different brand, and they have like a little how it's supposed to be set up ish. So if you're a retailer and you have a brick and mortar, your store needs to have like those front end influencers to be changed out weekly. That way, you can, you're selling your experience, right? I'm a garage shop, so people don't roll to my store, so I'm not practicing any of those, but I am online. My stuff on my website, I need to have new products come up, at least weekly, new postings and new bikes and new parts. I try when I have time, of course, and also all the social media pieces like my Facebook page, Instagram, and all those. I got to sell different perspectives. I mean, I'm selling the experience to draw that person in. It's like, oh, okay. If you're looking to get into road riding, which road riding is kind of cool, I got a bike probably for you. or I will. And I do have a lot of people that follow me in a sense, like I'm just waiting for that next great bike that you may, they either bought one for me or they heard from me. I'm like, I'm just waiting for my right size to pop up and the right color. And that's where you know, those kinds of things. So even, you know, it's just, it branches out from the brick and mortar to your online presence, right? You got to have those constant influencers. So I'm going to talk to the bike shop people that are independent bike shop people right now that have shops. You got to keep it up. It's not one of those things that's just like, oh, I'm going to do it once in a while and maybe it'll work for us. For me, what I found by using YouTube, and you're seeing me on this platform, is found to be the strongest platform for me for what I do. I mean, yeah, Instagram, kind of cool, and Twitter, I kind of get my head around it. Facebook page works fairly well, but YouTube has been one of the ones that really kind of legitimize my business. Basically, that's where I started it from. It's not to, you know, sell products per se, but I wanted to educate and provide more validation to me. And I don't know how many times I've sold a bike because somebody saw my video that I showed that bike or a bike and what I do. And it's like you go to my video website and you're like, okay, this is actually a real person. He's really doing this stuff. This is the bikes that he has. It gives the validation. As any other bike shop out there, if you're brick and mortar and you're fighting it and you started a YouTube channel, which I know there are a few of you out there and there's been dead in the water since like 3 or 4 years because you didn't see any instant gratification, or research it again, because some of the stores like we were at Cyclery. They have one from another company. I don't know if it's a parent company or a merged company. They have one, and it works really well for them. And they just do tech talks and stuff like that. And you know, it's building that brand as a bigger influence. So when you go to any Google search and you look up 2005 Specialized Roubaix comp, I'm sure you'll see a couple of my older listings. It's just nuts, and it just kind of feeds into that. And if you're looking at like, oh, how to take apart this derailleur, you know, you'll have some of those, and you'll see a couple of YouTube feeds showing how to take apart the, you know, the RD 6500 derailleur that I just did for the Ultegra. So, you know, those kind of things, you know, are they influencing you? Yeah. They are. Are you being influenced every day? You walk into any brick and mortar store, especially a chain, you're being influenced. They've spent millions of dollars of trying to figure out how to get in your head to buy stuff. But anywho, you know, rely on the reviews, ask the right questions. That's the thing, trying to figure out what the right questions are. If you're just getting into cycling, it is, you know, it does seem like any industry, it's overwhelming. If I went in rock climbing, I'd be like, you know, deer in the headlights, like, what do I need? Oh, okay. But, you know, there's people like me, there's shops like me out there that will help you through that journey and just be upfront. It's like, hey, I'm just starting into this, and, you know, what does your shop provide for this kind, you know, for my journey I want to get into? And I've done it so effectively out of my garage that I've had people come back and buy multiple bikes for me. I mean, I think I've had more resell to the same customers in the last 2 months than I've had with new customers, because they saw that, ooh, I want to try that. And they realize that I put everything I can into that bike, and they're going to have the best outcome for that used bike possible. And they're going to have a really good experience. And one guy's like, oh, I bought a client from you. It's a nice aluminum frame, but I want to try the steel one that you've been talking about. Like, yeah, give it a try. You know, for me, I'm just sharing what I'm experiencing myself too, with playing with different brands. And you don't like it, you just turn around and sell it and get something different. But at the end of the day, you're kind of going away from the Kool-Aid, and you're like, actually, actual experience and what's being used. So that's where I've decided that I'm not really going to do brand deals. I'll buy some tools, and if I have the time, I'll make a video about them. You know, this is what the true brass tacks, when the rubber hits the road, this is what you need. And I'm not short of ideas by any means, but if you do have an idea or something you'd like to see, please, you know, put it in the comments below. And then I'll try to work those into my mix if I have the stuff or whatever. But, you know, it's a big, for me, the brand is me for a company that I'm trying to sell myself in a sense. The other brands like Trek and Specialized, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Don't listen. Don't. Yeah, like it's kind of funny. I've heard that phrase. Don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. When you're looking for a bike, okay, get you educated on the specs, but get your butt on that bike. You got to ride it. You got to try it out. That kind of thing. And when you're looking at online stuff, there is a market for that. Obviously, I sell bikes and I ship, and you just try to get educated to that, but also educate on what size of bike in that brand's going to fit you. Then you probably have a very good success rate of getting into riding. And that's where Canyon is really kind of blowing the doors off of that when they came into the US market, talking about branding, scare the pants off of Specialized and Trek. Literally, they were scared shitless. When this actually hit the market, I probably can't say that, but anyway, probably hit the market, and they were doing so well in Europe. When they decided to open up the United States market, Trek just kind of shaked a little bit. It did rock them to the core. Rocked to the core to the point that they needed to look at other things. Guess what they're doing now? They have brick and mortar stores all over the place. And they got, they smell blood in the water, and they have the stores all over to push their brand. And they're doing very successful at it. And they're even getting more aggressive. This year, they got an aggressive 24-hour service in their service departments. Especially ain't doing that. Pond's not doing that. They're doing a suspension service that they take out and they give you a bike to use for a couple of days and that kind of thing. Specialist is not doing that. Pond is not doing that. So, independent bike shops are trying to do those things, and that's where they're seeing the successes of that, or they've hired people from those shops. Like they're going, hey, if you do this, it might actually help with your bottom line. And Trek is actually, at first it was hard corporate warm hug, and now they're understanding that. Specialized is still late in the game. They're still getting used to that. I haven't been in a pawn shop, so I can't be honest in a perspective on them. Pawn is not pawn shop as like your corner pawn shop. Pawn is P-O-N. It's a company out of England, or not England, but Europe. And they own like Cannondale and some various other brands. So they are going under the umbrella of Mike's Bikes, I believe, out of California. And they bought a chain here, which was Elevation Cyclery in South Denver, Colorado, and they're now called Mike's Bikes or something of that nature. And same thing with Specialized. You won't see a Specialized store. It's called N-Cycle. They did the same kind of concept there. I don't know why. To me, it kind of baffles me. It's like, anyway, talking about a branding misstep, but that's my personal opinion. But anywho, yes, if you're influenced, you are influenced. It's just that there, but you can be, it's okay to be influenced. It's part of the game, right? As long as at the end of the day, you purchase that product, even though it might be a little more expensive, if you get use out of it and ride it or camp with it or whatever, exercise equipment's usually been the hugest soreness out there, because I don't know how many of you out there have bought something, exercise equipment, like a Bowflex or a treadmill or whatever, even a Peloton bike, and it kind of just sat there. Became a drying rack for your clothes. I mean, more often than not, that's happened. But hopefully, you nowadays you clear all that crap out. You get some stuff that you actually use, and if it's more expensive, if you're using it, it doesn't matter, right? It's like you validated the cost by using it. So yeah, you pay a little bit more for it. I'm not saying go out there and buy your first road bike and it's going to be $3,000. Don't do that. But to get into maybe a nicer used, like, well, should I look at the Justin's aluminum one, or maybe a couple $100 more, I'll get this nicer carbon one. Maybe that'll be a better experience, or the bike shop that you're buying from. And it reminds me that I do have a quick note. I had somebody comment on one of my videos, and an individual bought the same Specialized Roubaix bike, and he was asking me if he bought the right size, and I haven't responded to him yet, but yeah, I will. And basically he did, according to he's 6'1". He bought an extra large, which is that size chart frame for the Specialized Roubaix. And it's a 2000, I think a 5 or something like that, which it is confusing with those compact frames. You know, how do you really, because they measure out really smaller and getting too small, and you get a lot of people with their opinions or whatever. But you know, yes, the frame is the right size. But here's the thing. Seat, contact points. Your seat, does it fit you? You'll know that after about 20 miles riding. The front end of the bike, you may need a shorter stem, longer stem, higher stem, so that might be an adjustment that may need to be done. And if you're doing platform pedals and that kind of thing, to give you the best riding experience, look at some of those fit videos for your bike to see if you need to do any of those kind of adjustments on that. And things like cycling gloves to help your hands for comfort. Also, that's protection if you do biff it. Helmet, obviously. Cycling shorts, the other contact point, those pads that actually do help for comfort as well as wicking moisture so you don't get chafing. So those are the kind of things there. So yeah, I'm selling you Kool-Aid, but it's actually function over fashion in the sense that it's, you know, I'm not telling you what brand, I'm just telling you just get a pair. That kind of thing. Cycling clipless, I'd wait until you get comfortable with the bike first. Then if you want to dive into clipless, have somebody at a shop help you with the clipless of clipping in and clipping out and educational bits on that, or watch some videos on that kind of fitting bit as well, because there's some tricks to it to help you out for comfort as well as educational for less accident. You're going to fall, you know, so you want to keep it minimalized of not damaging and going to the ER fall. So those are the things. Education, you know, if somebody's preaching to you and it resonates, that's good. If it's something you're just like, this salesperson just seems like is out left field and just is just reading a playbook, that happens. But that doesn't mean the product's bad either. It's just that, you know, they're not being presented very well. So it's actually, yeah, I believe the survey. You get the actual people's review or companies that do independent reviews, they're going to be the best non-biased perspective, but still take that for a grain of salt. So, are you influenced? Yeah, we're all suckers. It just is. Yeah, I go to check out the Walmart with my daughter, and she's swayed by Bubble Yum, and I want the, you know, she wants that, and she's nagging me like, yeah, fine, just get it. You know, it's like, you know, yeah, we're fine. You know, either if it's us directly or influenced through our family members or friends or whatever, it's there. There's a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of good bikes out there. This is a great time to get into the used market. If you're looking to maybe doing some gravel adventure, some of those bikes are kind of coming into the market a little bit, not as expensive. Looking for something a little bit more newer. Those things are kind of hitting the market. They might be a little more pricier, but they're still a lot cheaper than the Pro's Closet. I'm still trying to figure out where the hell Trek's Red Barn bikes are going to be coming out of. I mean, are they going to have their own website for that, or is it the Trek website? Because they're not selling them in their stores, the used ones. If you saw a video before, what they're doing is they've always done a trade-in, but now they're doing a specific trade-in and keeping the Trek brands that they keep, or for that, you know, for them to resell themselves, and everything else is being pushed through Bicycle Blue Book. So you got that going on. So yeah, it's, you know, this internet thing has made it a wild, wild west for branding. Woo! Would I be influenced by racers? Not one bit. Maybe by mechanics that work on this stuff. They're the ones that are the true test the mental of what works, what doesn't work. But then again, they're drinking the Kool-Aid because that's what's put in their hand to use for the races. So, yeah, that's where Specialized, they pulled the whole race market influence thing, probably the best thing they did, because that's you know, put it into product research, grassroots, you know, more of the warm hug kind of thing. But please bring back the static fits for people. My gosh, just something simple, trainer, throw them on there, a couple tidbits. You can talk to them about the bike a little bit more right there. I don't know, they're missed opportunities. They're just so gung-ho about the retool or the position fit from Trek. Just nuts. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. That's what I've noticed within the industry lately. And yeah, we had a little recall. Oh boy. as a little guy, this is my third one. Think about it. There's a lot out there. They're all fine, by the way. I mean, they've been what they say so far, but. So is that going to affect branding? That's another question. Is this big recall going to hurt Shimano? Well, they're big. They do have big competition with SRAM. That might not push some people to go to the other side into seeing that, especially if they're looking at new. Or is this recall big enough or been informal enough to resonate into the market of people purchasing? We'll see, because I got a couple of bikes. I got a list to have these. I got the official receipt that's been inspected from a Shimano dealer. So are they going to be harder to sell? Are they going to be easier, okay to sell? I mean, I think they're going to be fine, but all depends on the influence of the negative influence of the recall and how informed people are in the next 6, 7, 8 months, years from now. Anywho, well, that's my time for today. Thank you for spending time with me. Hopefully you got a little bit of insights there. It was good chatting with you. Again, it's my pleasure. From the garage. If it's nice in your neighborhood, go out there and go for a ride. Get your head out of whatever you're dealing with and be part of not what you're not dealing with there daily. Anyway, thanks again. You take care. And again, put some comments below if anything that resonates or whatever. Thank you and have a great day.